Nigel Mansell wins his third consecutive race in the German Grand Prix at Hockenheim. But Ayrton Senna and Alain Prost resumed their bitter feud following this incident. Those stories, plus a look at some of the future stars of Formula One in the Formula 3000 race. A look at what's on the menu as we take a gastronomic tour of the Formula One kitchens. And a tribute to one of the great champions of all time, Jim Clark. That's all coming up on the official story of the FIA Formula One World Championship, Inside Track. About 85 kilometers south of Frankfurt is the Hockenheim motor racing circuit, since 1986 the permanent home of the German Grand Prix. It's easily accessible by major motorways from all directions and is in the heart of one of the most beautiful parts of Germany. Not far from Hockenheim is the quaint medieval city of Heidelberg, known for its university, one of the very first in Europe. Its most famous landmark is the castle overlooking the city and the river Neckar. Heidelberg has a unique ambiance, making it a favorite for visitors all the year round. Certainly the Formula One fraternity enjoys patronizing the cafes and shops in the area. The circuit itself is unique in that all major amenities are easily accessible. The Hotel Motordrome is located just underneath the main grandstand, with access to the best seats in the house by just opening a door.
Good times, das ist Mr. Eric Burden. Das sind Oldies auf der Welle von 106,1 auf der Welle von Radio Hockenheim Ring.
There's also a radio station to keep spectators entertained and informed. A crowd of close to 200,000 was expected over the weekend. And like all Grand Prix, the event attracted some very famous personalities.
Well, I have to say, because of my schedule, it's very tough sometimes to continue to watch it, but I've been in Hockenheim a few times, and I've been trying to pick up some on TV or follow it in the newspapers, and for the past few years, Ayrton Senna has been my favorite.
Certainly, for Ayrton Senna, the German Grand Prix here at Hockenheim would be another vital race in his quest to stay ahead of Nigel Mansell. The Englishman had won the two previous Grand Prix in France and England, narrowing the margin in the world driver standings heading into this race. Senna's lead was now just 18 points, and with 10 for a win, Mansell was within striking distance. Certainly, Silverstone had been a personal triumph for Mansell, but also for Frank Williams, for the Williams team were now very close to McLaren Honda. Senna and McLaren were no longer the dominant force that they once were.
I have to be honest, we haven't had much progress since Imola, both on the engine and on the car, despite some efforts which have been made. But of course, other people also improve, and the progress in the end made by everybody have been matched by each other, and the gap that was there right from the beginning has maintained itself and maybe even extend a little more.
So, while Hockenheim would be the venue for Senna and McLaren to try and hold off Mansell and Williams, for many, the circuit will always be remembered as the track where the legendary Jim Clark was killed. The spot where he crashed is marked with a memorial. Jim Clark was above all a gifted driver. Whether he drove at Le Mans, the Indianapolis 500, or in Formula One, Jim Clark excelled in every car with his smoothness, delicacy and precision. Before his untimely death on April the 7th, 1968 in a Formula 2 race, Clark had raced in 72 Grand Prix, starting on pole position 33 times and winning 25 races. He not only dominated Formula One, but was perhaps the best driver of his era. In 1965, for instance, there were 10 races in the World Championship, with the driver's 6 best results to count. At the Nürburgring in Germany, Clark won his 6th race, sealing the title by early August. In fact, the German Grand Prix was the 7th of the series, but Clark had missed Monte Carlo. He'd been away, winning the Indianapolis 500 that weekend.
For me, Jim Clark was the best racing driver I ever drove with or against. He was smooth, he was gentlemanly, he was fast more than anything else. He was just the ultimate driver's driver. Because I saw how accurate he drove, how accurately he handled a car, the precision of his driving, the smoothness of his driving, I had to follow him a lot. We raced together a lot in the Tasman Championship, we raced Cortinas together, we raced Lotus Elans together, as well as Formula 1 and Formula 2 together. And I think he was, for me, the master of going faster. Jim Clark was the most indecisive person I think I've ever met outside of a racing car. In a racing car, all the decisions were made almost by computer, you felt. Outside of a racing car, he couldn't make up his mind which restaurant to go to, which movie to go to, which anything to go to. I never forget us missing movies, missing restaurants, because by the time we had chosen the one that Jimmy felt we should go to, it was closed, because we were going from one to another. What do you think? Is this one better? I think the epitome of the Jim Clark saga on decision making is the one that I speak of when we were in Sebring for a 12-hour race together, and we drove from our hotel to the Sebring racetrack, and of course it's a very flat area of Florida. We had to cross a railway line without any gates, so we stopped. Jimmy was driving, and he looks left, he looks right, and then he looks left again, and there is nothing for 10 miles in either direction. And he turns around to me and he says, "What do you think?" Because he didn't want to make the decision on his own to go across a level crossing with 10 miles in either side in each direction with nothing there. It was a little bit tongue-in-cheek, but it's kind of Jim Clark.
Still to come on Inside Track, Satoru Nakajima announces his retirement. The drivers weigh in. And a look back at great German Grand Prix of the past, including Patrick Tambay's win for Ferrari in 1982. It's all coming up next here on Screensport. At the first race of the year in Phoenix, and then again at the halfway point in the season, FISA, the governing body of the sport, weighs each driver dressed in overalls with gloves and helmet to facilitate scrutineering during qualifying. Roberto Moreno was still the lightest in spite of putting on a kilo to weigh in at 59. Nigel Mansell was once again the heaviest, but had remained stable at an even 80 kilos as before. Jean Alesi used the occasion to show off his t-shirt. But for Tyrrell driver Satoru Nakajima, this would be the last time that he would go through this particular exercise. Earlier that afternoon, Ken Tyrrell had called a press conference to confirm that Japan's first permanent Grand Prix driver would be retiring at the end of the season. After winning 5 national Formula 2 championships in his native Japan, Nakajima started his Formula 1 career in the Lotus Honda Turbo in 1987. He scored 7 points that year, finishing 11th in the championship. In 3 years with Lotus, Nakajima made a name for himself and became a national hero in Japan. He joined Tyrrell last year and was one reason why the team was able to secure use of the Honda V10 engine this year. But at 38 years old, Nakajima has decided he's had enough and will end his career in the Australian Grand Prix in Adelaide. But while this would be Nakajima's last German Grand Prix for 23-year-old Michael Bartels, it would be his first. Bartels will be standing in for Johnny Herbert at Lotus for 4 races, while the Le Mans co-winner fulfills Japanese Formula 3000 commitments. It represents a unique opportunity for a debut in Formula 1 in Bartels' native country. Among some of the interested onlookers in pit lane were former driver and now television commentator Patrick Tambay. Indeed, he won here back in 1982. It was in that race that leader Nelson Piquet, trying to lap Eliseo Salazar at the second chicane, found himself squeezed out by the Chilean ATS driver, putting both cars out of the race and introducing Thai boxing to Grand Prix racing. Patrick Tambay wound up crossing the finishing line for a first-time Grand Prix win. René Arnoux was second, Keke Rosberg in the Williams third. Piquet's luck didn't change much the next year when his turbocharged Brabham caught fire, and once again the Brazilian had to make a quick and unscheduled exit from his car. René Arnoux won for Ferrari in a year that saw the Italian team take the Constructors' title, but it was Piquet who took the Drivers' Championship for Brabham. In 1984, another huge crowd was on hand as Alain Prost took pole in the McLaren Tag Porsche. Formula One rookie Ayrton Senna found the going tough as he spun his Tolman Hart turbo into the barrier, knocking him out of the race. Prost dominated the event from start to finish, but in the final analysis, his record-breaking 7 wins that season still weren't enough to beat teammate Niki Lauda, who won the World Drivers' title that year by half a point. Michele Alboreto has won 5 Grand Prix in his career, the last coming back in the 1985 German Grand Prix at the Nürburgring. Alain Prost was second in the race, but eventually took the world title, while Jacques Lafitte was third in the Ligier. In 1986, the burning story was fuel, or rather lack of it. Ayrton Senna weaved his car from side to side in order to pick up the last drops of fuel to cross the finishing line. But Alain Prost wasn't so lucky, for he rolled to a halt and, to the fans' amazement, tried to push his car to the line. Nelson Piquet won the race with Senna second and Mansell third. Piquet won for the second time in a row in 1987, but a year later, Ayrton Senna won the first of 3 consecutive German Grand Prix. The McLaren totally dominant as Senna and Prost finished 1-2. This despite an uncharacteristic spin in the early stages on a wet surface by Prost. The story was much the same in 1989, Senna and Prost on the front row of the grid and the pair finishing in that order. However, the race was marred by Emanuele Pirro spectacularly demolishing a huge polystyrene block in the escape road at the entrance to the stadium and suffering leg injuries. While Gerhard Berger also demonstrated the dangers of this high-speed circuit when he lost control of his Ferrari. In 1990, Senna and McLaren made it 3 German Grand Prix in a row, with another dominating performance. Senna first, Berger third. But 1991 would be a completely different story, as McLaren were no longer the dominant force heading into the second half of the season. And when we come back after the break, a look at how qualifying went as Senna and McLaren tried to halt the momentum of Williams, Renault and Mansell. That's coming up next on Inside Track on Screensport. Hungry stroll around a Formula One paddock and your taste buds will tell you that the quality of cuisine in the motorhomes is as good, if not better, than most restaurants. In fact, it's Grand Prix gastronomy. Top quality, international in variety, and quite simply delicious. For the people who run the motorhomes, the day might begin at 6 AM with a trip to the market to pick up the freshest products. Upon returning to the paddock a couple of hours later, the preparation begins. Mechanics won't have a chance to eat until the qualifying session is over, so sandwiches are prepared to tie them over. Between 11:30 and 1 comes the casual sitting for lunch, but the workers, those involved, have to wait until after qualifying to eat at around 2:30 PM. Formula One being what it is, the spirit of competition extends even into the kitchen. Karl-Heinz Zimmermann of the Camel Motorhome takes us on a tour.
This is the quietest time of the day?
The English. That's the English kitchen from Leighton House. Bravo. Nice dessert, cakes. Did you make them yourself? Oh. Bravo. Very good. Very good. Let's have a look outside, what they have.
Absolutely.
What's this?
Pasta with tuna fish, peppers and onion.
English?
Absolutely.
Recipe. 100%.
English stroke Italian.
All right. So half English, half Italian.
Half Italian.
Very good. Well, before we have seen the English kitchen, now we are at Ligier's kitchen, our friend from France. Bonjour.
Bonjour.
Tu fais quoi là?
Je prépare le melon pour les mécaniciens, le melon prosciutto,
Et les mécaniciens mangent quand?
à 14h30.
Bon, bien. Et les sponsors maintenant?
Les sponsors, à ce moment.
So he now prepares the stuff for the mechanics who are going to eat after second practice. And the sponsors, they've just eaten now. Maybe you still see a few out there having their lunch.
But the real gourmet must wait until the evening. Zimmermann from Austria is renowned for the quality and style of presentation, and tonight he prepares a dinner for sponsors. They start with smoked salmon and caviar, followed by marinated venison that is lightly grilled and served with a tempting sauce. The food is superb, and so is the wine, all part of a typical day in the paddock.
Wine from Italy.
Yeah?
Or maybe.
Yes, I know. Excellent. Well, you should serve this to our guests. It's very good.
Right? You're going to serve it after dinner?
Fantastic.
In the motorhome.
With this start to the second half of the season, the pre-qualifying cast had changed somewhat. Dallara, Lamborghini and Jordan had been moved up and been replaced by Brabham, Footwork and AGS, joining Fondmetal and Coloni in the Wide Awake Club. Martin Brundle ensured Brabham Yamaha of at least one runner. But how did pre-qualifying affect the team's plans?
Well, we have to get up earlier on a Friday morning, of course. Pre-qualifying is a bit of a lottery. Here at Hockenheim it went very easily for us, and I was easily the fastest. And in fact, because we had no major problems, it gave us more track time, so it worked out quite well for us.
Gabriele Tarquini was a fine second quickest in the AGS, although he nearly joined teammate Barbazza as a non-pre-qualifier.
I had a problem with water temperature, and I wait the last 5 minutes for the qualified tires, and I try a good lap, no traffic, and the car have a good balance and also quick balance, and I am very happy to pass the pre-qualify on the first time with AGS in pre-qualifier.
Michele Alboreto made it through pre-qualifying, where rejoining teammate Alex Caffey didn't, and Footwork's man was third quickest, with Mark Blundell completing the top 4 after his first experience with the Wide Awake Club. On this ultra-quick circuit, there were surprises throughout the field in practice. Berger had won when Morbidelli spun, and the McLaren driver was forced, as it were, to spin in sympathy. Jean Alesi found that traffic is still a problem, even though this is the second longest Grand Prix circuit at 6.9 kilometers. It's a matter of weaving your way through, as Michele Alboreto found. There are other hazards, however, as Riccardo Patrese discovered in qualifying, when a loose wheel from Mika Häkkinen's crashed Lotus caused him to abort a lap in Friday's qualifying session. But at least Ricciardo was ahead of Alain Prost in the Ferrari, 6th quickest and not entirely happy now with the car's V12 engine, which he found lacked torque, a complaint echoed by teammate Jean Alesi, who was fractionally quicker than his older compatriot, both hoping that new mapping would improve matters. Surprisingly, Ayrton Senna was only 4th in this qualifying session, the Brazilian suffering only a mildly stiff neck after his huge accident in testing here, and losing one set of tyres when a shower of rain dampened the track late in the session. Patrese ended up 3rd quickest, held up by the errant tyre on one run and slowed by the drizzle on the second, but naturally hopeful that there was more to come the next day when he might wreak revenge on his teammate. Gerhard Berger was an encouraging second quickest and very happy with his car, although he confessed that while his McLaren Honda was a match for the Williams Renaults in the stadium section, the French engine had the edge on the straights. And it was Mansell who was quickest in both sessions on Friday, ending up on provisional pole in the Williams Renault in spite of a couple of small mistakes. Given these mistakes, Mansell was happy, particularly as no one was able to improve in the dying minutes of the session when the umbrellas came out because of a light drizzle.
Well, we've got a very, very good balance on the car, which allows us to take a lot of wing off. I think we're running the least wing in the pit lane, and because of that, we're going exceptionally fast down the straight. A little bit difficult in the medium speed corners in the infield, but you know, I'm very, very happy with that.
While the conclusion of Friday's qualifying marked the end of the day's action on the circuit for Formula One cars, there was still plenty to see at Hockenheim as the Formula 3000 cars warmed up for Saturday's 6th race in the championship. There are basically only 3 makes of car in the series: Lola, Reynard and Ralt. The technical differences between cars are marginal, so it's talent and driving skill that separates teams and drivers. Which is why Formula 3000 has always been considered the breeding ground for Formula One stars of the future. Christian Fittipaldi, son of ex-Formula One driver Wilson and nephew of the former world champion Emerson, currently leads the Formula 3000 series and was rumoured to be negotiating to make his Formula One debut at Spa later this year. Damon Hill, son of the legendary Graham Hill, is already on a testing contract with Williams and seems destined for Formula One.
I'd ideally like to be in Formula One next year, because I feel I've had 2 seasons in 2 full seasons in 3000. This season's not gone that well, and I feel like I need a fresh challenge. If necessary, I'll do another year in 3000, and hopefully things will be better and I'll win races and go to Formula One then. But however long it takes, but I'd like to be in next year.
Glamour and brains and skill are provided by Giovanna Amati, driving for the GJ Motorsport team.
It's a macho environment, this one. Then it's difficult to accept a woman to get in, you know. But I'll try anyway, I never give up.
Eddie Jordan has enjoyed tremendous success in Formula 3000 in the past and still actively participates in the running of the Barclay team despite his demanding Formula One schedule. Jean Alesi drove for Jordan when the EJR team took the Formula 3000 title in 1989. The Ferrari driver still has plenty of friends in the series. One look up and down pit lane and it was clearly evident that the current Formula One stars are keeping an eye on those who could be threats to their careers in the future. Back to Formula One now, and Saturday's free practice session was just a few minutes old when the session had to be stopped. Eric Comas had crashed out of the Ostkurve chicane, and although he was able to crawl from the wreckage of his crashed Ligier Lamborghini, there was a fair amount of debris on the circuit, and it was clear that the track had to be cleared. Comas himself appeared unhurt as he took off his helmet, although the marshals crowded around him to help him.
I don't know what happened exactly. I was flat on 6 just before the second chicane here on Hockenheim, and just before about 50 meters before I brake, the wheel moves a lot and the car goes just a little on the left, and then I spun and I crashed, but I don't know exactly why.
Formula One is very cautious about injuries, and although Comas appeared unhurt, he was flown to a nearby hospital for a checkup in case he was suffering concussion. But he was given a clean bit of health and was soon back in the paddock.
And how is your health now?
It's very good, as yesterday. In fact, I was very shocked after this crash because it was very quick, but the medical bilan is very, very good, nothing at all.
So we'll see you tomorrow.
Yeah, sure.
This was only the start of an incident-packed morning. Senna, for instance, had this hairy moment in front of teammate Berger as they braked for a chicane. Berger took a rocking roller coaster ride onto the dirt out of the first corner, but managed to keep the car fairly straight and didn't hit anything. Gugelmin had a spin on his own oil when his engine blew and sent him off the track at the third chicane, his Leightonhouse Ilmore nearly bouncing back into the circuit again. And Pierluigi Martini had this little spin in his Minardi Ferrari in the stadium area, which fortunately ended fairly harmlessly for the Italian driver. It was all part of a busy morning, which also saw the world champion having an off at the first chicane. Or was this a visit to inspect the facilities for later in the weekend? But the real action was to get underway in the afternoon for final qualifying. On the face of it, the Williams drivers had every reason to be confident. Mansell had been fastest in every session since the French Grand Prix, but Patrese wasn't so happy. The Williams mechanics were still sorting out a gearbox problem and changing his Renault engine after problems in the morning. Once out on the track, Patrese set a time just 4/10 slower than his pole-winning teammate, and it might have been quicker but for finding himself a gear higher in a chicane, which resulted in a hairy moment.
I had to change the gearbox, and the gearbox had a problem this morning. They changed the gearbox this afternoon, had a gain of malfunctions in the gearbox. Unfortunately, he didn't like to changing down from 5th to 4th, so it was sometimes stuck in 5th instead to go to 4th.
And tomorrow it's a question of all about reliability, isn't it?
We will see. I think we are okay for the race.
Gerhard Berger slipped from 2nd to 3rd, his best time slightly slowed when his McLaren Honda went a little wide at the end of the lap as his tyres were virtually finished on this long circuit. Teammate Ayrton Senna, on pole for the last 3 years at Hockenheim, adopted a low downforce setup for maximum speed on the straights. But as a result, he found the McLaren difficult to control and this year had to be content with second quickest time. Ron Dennis's team sandwiched between the Williamses. For just 0.2 quicker than Senna was Nigel Mansell in the Williams.
They seem to be the right settings, the right compromise for corner speed and straight line speed, and we improve a lot from yesterday, and it's good to have improvement from the first day to the second day.
Mansell was fastest anyway when he went out at the end of the session and came upon the unfortunate Comas, who had spent most of the morning in the hospital and was now desperately trying to get into the race. He was trying to get through the chicane as quickly as he could, but got short shrift from Mansell, who, after having a few words with Comas in the pits, had more with the stewards after his impetuosity. Senna then on the front row and not happy about it, but as his frustration mounts, there is light at the end of the tunnel for the Brazilian.
We are waiting for new things soon, and we have to give time, but I think for the difference we are looking for to catch the Williams, we need a lot more than we are going to have soon, and we need it fast, of course, because the championship is still open for me, and with the performance that the Williams Renault have got right now, we just cannot compete with them, and if we want to compete in the championship, we need those improvements very soon.
Later that afternoon came the Formula 3000 race. Andrea Montermini was on pole and leading the race when he had to retire with engine problems. Emanuele Naspetti of 40 Course International eventually won for the second time in succession, moving him up to 3rd place in the overall standings.
Well, every race is important to win. Obviously in this circuit today it was a little bit more important than another, but honestly I didn't think about this when I drove the car. I just talk about drive well and go to finish the race the best is possible.
Finishing second was Vincenzo Sospiri from the Barclay team, followed by Austria's Karl Wendlinger. After the day's racing was over, Hockenheim's nightlife began. Braun of Germany held a party that was so exclusive that even Gerhard Berger had trouble getting in. we can report that the McLaren driver was eventually able to gain access and share the evening with compatriot and former ski champion Harti Vairata. But as the sun set, not everyone was socializing. As darkness fell in the garages along pit lane, the mechanics were, as usual, working late into the night, preparing the cars for the next day's Grand Prix.
Angesengelt hier unten. Die Toten, das ist etwas Neues. Vier, drei, zwei, eins, Stopp! Formel 1, HIA.
So, while the party continued, so too did the preparations for round 9 of the FIA's Formula 1 World Championship, the German Grand Prix from Hockenheim, coming up next on Inside Track here on Screensport. And the warm-up begins. The teams need this vital hour for final race tuning and checking. The stadium sections are already almost full, despite the race being some 4.5 hours away. Outside, thousands more are heading for their seats. Nigel Mansell seems to be an obvious crowd favourite. While Ayrton Senna, well,